turn to Adam Klasfeld from Courthouse News.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Struck also by your speech's focus on Canadian Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. My question to you, would you recommend, as many observers have, the vehicle of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address the issues, the legacy of slavery and white supremacy that gave rise to what we saw in Charlottesville? And if so, how might Canada's lessons benefit the United States in confronting that legacy?
Part of my desire to share Canada's shame, but also the path that we are taking to address the mistakes we've made in the past, is to highlight that it can and should be done.
A very important part of the Chevron propaganda against our government is that this is a persecution of our government against Chevron.
I want to start things off by talking a bit about the Chevron case. As you know, this battle has been going on for more than 20 years. 3 years ago, Ecuadorian citizens won a $9.5 billion verdict against Chevron for oil contamination to the Amazon. And last month, a judge here in New York, Judge Lewis Kaplan, said that that ruling was procured by corrupt means. How do you respond to that ruling?
Do you read the Guardian report? They told everything about Chevron. This was a strategy from 2008 in order to destroy the reputation of the Ecuadorian government, the reputation of our judiciary system, and to continue in impunity.
Prime Minister Browne, when you delivered your address before the General Assembly in September, you spoke about how crushing debt stood in the way of Barbuda's recovery, and you made the same point today. Can you give me an update on what's happened, and would you urge the people who are trying to collect this debt to understand the situation Barbuda's in and provide some sort of relief?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Where we have a challenge is that there has been a block of Paris Club loans totaling about 140 million US dollars that have been outstanding for probably about 3 decades. So for them to give some level of relief during this time of crisis will be welcomed. I understand that there are some who believe that we should be accelerating those repayments, but we have made a point that if the country could not have paid those loans prior to the hurricane, I do not know how someone could sensibly think that we can pay them now that we're in this crisis. So that is really where we need some relief, and we're hoping that the Paris Club countries will understand that this is a form of human cooperation necessary. It's not a situation that we're coming cap in hand. This is a national disaster, and one in which we require the assistance of the international community.
Hi, I'm Matthew Feeney from Reason TV, here to discuss the Bradley Manning trial. I am joined by Eli Lake, National Security Correspondent for The Daily Beast and Newsweek, Adam Klasfeld from Courthouse News, and Alexa O'Brien, an independent journalist covering the Bradley Manning trial.
The last time that the aiding the enemy charge has been used for a leak to the press was the Civil War era. The case of Private Henry Vanderwater, who leaked a Union roster to a newspaper in Alexandria, Virginia.
All three of you, I'd like to ask what you think the biggest takeaway from this, the Bradley Manning case is.
You learn a lot more from the trial if you look at it in terms of what we know about the way our social institutions function. We should be having a discussion about open diplomacy. We should be having discussions about the contents of the leaks to a much higher extent. think one thing that needs a little bit more emphasizing and highlighting is just what did Bradley Manning leak? What do we know now in 2013 that we didn't know before WikiLeaks published all this information in 2009? And what is the value of that information? What do we know about what's going on in Guantanamo Bay? What do we know about what happened during the Iraq and Afghanistan war? What did we not know about the conduct of U.S. diplomacy and that we do know now? I think in a lot of the focus on who Bradley Manning is and what WikiLeaks is and the personal drama of it, which is interesting, just what was leaked has gotten the short shrift. I typically cover federal courts, and one thing I can say about how courts-martial differs from federal court proceedings is that federal court proceedings have the right to public access to transcripts, have the right to public access for any sorts of legal filings, any sorts of piece of evidence is entered into the record. You have near immediate access. After, I would say, several years now of pressure from groups like Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, individual journalists, and Freedom of the Press Foundation, we're getting a little bit more sunlight into the proceedings.